First contact. The exosuit's proximity alarm blared as Nova Blackwood scaled the jutting black rock formation. She silenced it with a quick tap, her breath fogging the helmet's visor. The last thing she needed was noise attracting unwanted attention. Command advised against exploring the eastern ranges. Her AI companion, Pixel, reminded her through the helmet speakers. Command advises against everything interesting. Nova replied, her gloved hands finding another grip in the volcanic glass. At 17, she was Helios 9's youngest xenobiological research apprentice, which meant she got all the grunt work and none of the credit. But today would be different. The rumors about the eastern ranges had circulated for weeks. 3 survey teams had gone missing. Equipment malfunctioned. Strange shadows moved between thermal readings. The Colony Council had declared it off-limits, but Nova's mentor, Dr. Sorensen, had let slip something intriguing during yesterday's lab work, unusual biological markers in soil samples that matched nothing in the colonial database. Nova reached the ridge's summit and activated her suit's atmospheric sampling protocol. The scanner hummed, processing the thin air of Helios 9. The readout made her pause. Trace amounts of an unknown organic compound. Bingo. I'm logging an anomaly, Nova, Pixel said. The compound appears to be a complex pheromone. Source: unknown. Nothing in our database. Nova smiled. That's why we explore, Pixel. The valley below stretched out like a wound in the planet's surface, a long, shadowed ravine untouched by the terraforming efforts that had made the Western Hemisphere habitable for the 10,000 human colonists. Something moved in the shadows between the jagged rocks. Something large. Nova adjusted her optics, zooming in. The movement came again. Fluid, deliberate, predatory. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Pixel, are you recording this? Affirmative. Initiating full spectrum analysis. The shape emerged from the shadows, and Nova's breath caught. It stood nearly 3 meters tall on 6 limbs that moved with unsettling coordination. Its body was covered in what appeared to be overlapping obsidian scales that absorbed light rather than reflected it. But most disturbing was its head, or rather, the absence of anything recognizable as one. Where a head should be, there was only a collection of sensory appendages surrounding what might be a mouth, a vertical slit lined with serrated edges. Classification. Nova whispered. None available, Pixel replied. This species is not in colonial records. Cross-reference with Earth's xenobiological database. A moment passed. No match found. This appears to be an undocumented species. Nova carefully extracted her sample kit from her pack. A discovery like this would change everything, not just for her career, but for understanding Helios 9's ecosystem. The colony had been established 5 years ago, and the survey teams had documented hundreds of species, but nothing like this apex predator. I'm calling it a void shade, she decided. As if hearing its new name, the creature below froze. Its sensory appendages extended upward, turning with eerie precision toward Nova's position. It's detected us, Pixel warned. Recommend immediate withdrawal. The void shade moved with shocking speed, scaling the rock face with its multiple limbs finding purchase where Nova had struggled. The proximity alarm screamed back to life as the creature closed half the distance in seconds. Nova scrambled backward, abandoning her sample kit. Pixel, send emergency signal to command. Coordinates and visual data. She didn't wait for confirmation, sliding down the opposite side of the ridge, loose stones cascading with her. The suit's propulsion system was only meant for low-gravity assistance, not flight, but she activated it anyway, gaining precious meters of distance. The void shade crested the ridge, its outline stark against the purple-hued sky. It paused, those sensory appendages waving, before changing direction, not toward Nova, but toward the sample kit she'd left behind. Nova froze, half hidden behind a boulder. The creature inspected the kit, manipulating it with surprising dexterity using its smaller foremost limbs. It wasn't destroying the equipment. It was examining it. Nova, emergency response is inbound. ETA 4 minutes, Pixel announced. The Void Shade's head appendages snapped up at the sound. It dropped the sample kit and turned directly toward Nova's position. Something brushed against Nova's mind. A pressure, alien yet unmistakable. A question without words. Curiosity. The sensation vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The Void Shade retreated, disappearing into the shadows of the ravine with the same fluid speed with which it had appeared. Nova stood shakily. Did you record any unusual energy readings just now? Negative, Pixel replied, though there was a momentary spike in your neural activity. The colony's response team found her there, still staring into the ravine, trying to understand what had just happened. Absolutely not. I won't allow a 17-year-old apprentice to endanger herself or this colony. Administrator Chen slammed his fist on the conference table, making the holographic display flicker. Nova's discovery had thrown the colony into crisis mode. 3 more Void Shades had been spotted near the perimeter of the settlement. Equipment continued to malfunction in their presence. Fear spread through Helios 9 like a virus. With respect, Administrator, Nova said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm the only one who's had direct contact without being attacked. Dr. Sorensen, Nova's mentor, nodded reluctantly. The girl has a point. The creatures have shown aggressive behavior toward our security teams, but seemed merely curious about Nova. Curious predators still kill, Doctor, Chen replied. He turned to the colony's security chief. What's the status of the defensive perimeter? Commander Rivera's weathered face looked grim. We've established energy barriers around the main settlement, but these creatures, Void Shades, seem to disrupt our systems just by being nearby. Conventional weapons are effective, but we have limited ammunition supplies until the next Earth shipment. Nova bit her lip. They were preparing for war against a species no one understood. I've been analyzing the data, she said, pulling up her findings on the display. The Void Shades aren't random predators. Their movements show patterns. They're systematic, coordinated, and they're intelligent. All the more reason to eliminate the threat, Rivera stated. Or all the more reason to communicate, Nova countered. The one I encountered could have killed me easily, but it didn't. It was studying my equipment, showing curiosity. Speculation, Chen dismissed. Nova took a deep breath. There's more. I felt something. A mental contact. These creatures may be telepathic. The room fell silent. Telepathic species were rare in charted space and highly regulated by Earth's Sinological Authority. Dr. Sorensen looked at her sharply. You didn't mention this in your report. Because I knew how it would sound, Nova admitted, but I'm certain of what I felt. Chen exchanged worried glances with Rivera. If these creatures possess that kind of ability, the danger is even greater than we thought. Or the opportunity, Nova insisted. Earth's first contact protocols are clear. Telepathic species take priority for communication attempts. Those protocols assume established diplomatic channels and military backup, Rivera pointed out. We have neither. Nova stood up, her determination hardening. What we have is me. Someone who's made contact and survived. Someone they showed curiosity toward, not aggression. Out of the question, Chen said firmly. Nova looked around the table at the colony's leadership, scientists and administrators who had come to Helios 9 to build something new, to discover. Now fear was driving them toward destruction. If we kill these creatures without attempting communication, we betray everything this colony stands for, she said quietly. We become the monsters in this story. Dr. Sorensen cleared his throat. Perhaps a controlled experiment. We could establish a secure observation post at the ridge where Nova made first contact. Too dangerous, Rivera objected. What's dangerous is ignorance, Nova shot back. We know nothing about their biology, their social structure, their intentions. They might be responding to what they perceive as our aggression. Chen studied her for a long moment. You truly believe you can communicate with these things? "I believe I can try," Nova answered honestly. "And I believe that attempt matters, whatever the outcome." The administrator sighed heavily. "Dr. Sorensen, if, and I stress if, we were to consider this approach, what would be required?" As they discussed logistics, Nova felt a renewed sense of purpose. Something had connected with her on that ridge, something ancient and alien, yet undeniably conscious. If she could bridge that gap, the implications would go far beyond Helios 9. It could reshape humanity's understanding of intelligence itself. What she didn't tell them was her plan to attempt contact again, with or without their approval. That night, she packed her modified exosuit with additional sensors and the neural amplifier she'd been secretly developing in the lab. By dawn, she was heading east, toward the territory of the Void Shades, driven by a conviction she couldn't explain even to herself. The galaxy's most dangerous predator had shown her curiosity, not teeth. Now she would return the favor. The bond. Dawn broke over the eastern ranges in bands of crimson and gold, casting long shadows across Nova's path. She disabled the tracking function in her exosuit, giving herself a 6-hour head start before the colony realized she was gone. By then, she'd either have made contact with the Void Shades or become another statistical entry in Helios 9's growing list of casualties. This course of action violates 17 colony protocols, Pixel informed her as she navigated the rocky terrain, and approximately 22 principles of common sense. Noted, Nova replied, adjusting the neural amplifier she'd attached to her helmet. The device was experimental, a modified version of medical equipment used to enhance neural plasticity in trauma patients. In theory, it might strengthen whatever telepathic contact she'd experienced with the Void Shade. In practice, no one knew, which was exactly why Nova had to try. She reached the ravine by mid-morning, setting up her equipment on a ledge overlooking the shadowed depression, where she'd first seen the creature. The valley floor lay quiet below, no sign of movement among the black rock formations. Nova activated her scanners, searching for the unique biological markers she'd detected before. Multiple organic signatures detected, Pixel announced after several minutes. At least 7 distinct entities matching the Void Shade profile. Nova's heart raced. Location: approximately 300 meters northeast, in what appears to be a cave system. Perfect. Nova carefully began her descent into the ravine, using natural cover whenever possible. The neural amplifier hummed against her skull, occasionally sending pins and needles sensations down her spine. Whether that was normal function or malfunction, she couldn't tell. As she approached the cave entrance, Nova activated the final phase of her plan. From her pack, she extracted a small container of synthesized pheromones, her best approximation of the compounds she detected during her first encounter. She placed it on a rock and stepped back, waiting. Minutes stretched into an hour. Nova was beginning to think her theory was wrong when the first Void Shade emerged from the cave. It was smaller than the one she'd encountered before, its movements more hesitant. A juvenile, perhaps. It approached the container, sensory appendages extended. A second Void Shade appeared behind it, larger, its movements authoritative. The adult she had met before. Nova took a deliberate step forward, making no attempt to hide. Both creatures turned toward her immediately, the smaller one retreating slightly. "I'm not a threat," she said aloud, knowing they couldn't understand her words. But words weren't the point. She focused her thoughts, projecting a sense of openness, curiosity, respect. The neural amplifier warmed against her skin. The adult Void Shade's appendages went rigid, then began to undulate in a rhythmic pattern. The pressure Nova had felt before returned, a touch against her consciousness, more deliberate this time. Images flashed through her mind. The colony's buildings from a distance, humans in exosuits collecting samples, the defensive perimeter with its energy barriers. The Void Shade was showing her what it had seen. Nova projected back, herself on the ridge, her wonder at discovering them, her desire to understand. The connection deepened, becoming a two-way flow. The creature, Its name concept, translating roughly as Kirax in Nova's mind, was not just communicating. It was inviting her deeper. Nova cautiously followed the mental path opening before her. Suddenly, she understood. The Void Shades weren't native to Helios 9. They were guardians, placed here eons ago by a now extinct race to protect something buried deep beneath the eastern ranges. A technology of immense power, what humans might call a doomsday weapon. The original makers had seeded dozens of worlds with such devices, a failsafe against some cosmic threat they had foreseen. The Void Shades had detected the colony's mining operations approaching dangerously close to the buried device. Their aggression wasn't predatory, it was preventative. "They're trying to save us," Nova whispered. "Nova, your neural patterns are showing extreme fluctuations," Pixel warned. "Recommend disconnecting the amplifier immediately." She ignored the eye. Through Kirax, she was witnessing the history of Helios 9 before human arrival. The millennia of quiet guardianship, the Void Shades evolving alongside their sacred duty, generation after generation maintaining their vigil. "We didn't know," she projected to Kirax. "We can stop the mining, establish boundaries." The response came not in words but in sensations, skepticism, concern. The Void Shades had encountered other species before, ones who had promised peace but returned with weapons. Nova showed Kirax her own memories, Earth's troubled history, humanity's painful lessons, the colony's genuine desire to coexist with Helios 9's ecosystem. She showed scientific conferences and conservation efforts, humanity's capacity for both destruction and protection. "We make mistakes," she acknowledged, "but we learn." A new presence entered the mental connection, larger, older. The Alpha of the Void Shade Collective. Its consciousness engulfed Nova's with ancient wisdom and wariness. It projected a direct question. Why should they trust humans with knowledge of what lay beneath? Nova had no easy answer. Instead, she opened herself completely, letting the Alpha see her fears, hopes, determinations, the full complex truth of her humanity, with all its contradictions. The mental presence withdrew slightly, considering. Then it showed Nova something unexpected, a vision of the future. The buried technology activated, not by human mistake, but by an approaching cosmic event, a massive energy wave moving through this sector of space, the same threat the original makers had feared. It would reach Helios 9 within a year. The vision shifted, Void Shades and humans working together, using human technology and Void Shade knowledge to either contain the buried device or safely relocate it. Two species with complementary strengths, neither able to succeed alone. The connection broke suddenly as the sound of approaching shuttles shattered the silence. The colony had found her. Kirax and the other Void Shade retreated toward the cave, but not before projecting one final image to Nova. The ridge at midnight, 3 days hence. An invitation. Commander Rivera was the first to reach her, weapon drawn. "Step away from those creatures, Nova." "Don't shoot," she shouted, moving between Rivera and the retreating Void Shades. "They're not what we think they are." Dr. Sorensen and Administrator Chen arrived moments later, their expressions a mix of anger and relief. "You could have been killed," Chen reprimanded her. "Instead, I've made a breakthrough," Nova replied, removing the neural amplifier. "The Void Shades aren't just animals. They're sentinels, guardians, and they've been trying to warn us." Over the next hours, Nova explained everything she'd learned. The buried technology, the approaching cosmic wave, the possibility of cooperation. Initially skeptical, the colony leadership became increasingly convinced as Nova provided details about Helios 9's geological structure that couldn't be dismissed as imagination. Details confirmed by deep scanning. "If what you're saying is true," Chen said finally, "this changes everything." "That's what first contact usually does," Nova replied with a small smile. 3 days later, Nova stood on the ridge at midnight. This time, she wasn't alone. Dr. Sorensen, Administrator Chen, and a small team of specialists waited with her, nervous but committed to the historic meeting. Kirax emerged from the darkness, accompanied by 3 other void shades. They approached without hesitation, their movements confident and purposeful. Nova stepped forward, the neural amplifier humming. The connection established immediately, stronger than before. "We're ready to listen," she projected, gesturing to the humans behind her. Kirax's response radiated through her mind and through the linked amplifiers to the others present. Colonial officials gasped as they experienced direct communication with the alien intelligence. The images shared that night became the foundation of the Helios Protocol, the first treaty between humans and void shades. Mining operations were redirected away from the eastern ranges. A joint research team began studying the buried technology, seeking ways to neutralize the threat it posed once activated by the approaching cosmic wave. 6 months later, Nova stood at the entrance to the Void Shade's main cave complex, no longer needing an exosuit to survive the harsh conditions. The Void Shades had shown humans how to adapt to Helios 9's atmosphere through controlled biological modifications, just one of many exchanges of knowledge. Kirax waited for her, its form now familiar, even comforting. Through their regular mental connections, Nova had learned that the Void Shades experienced emotion differently than humans, but no less deeply. They understood loyalty, curiosity, and determination, qualities they had come to respect in their human counterparts. "The Earth ship arrives tomorrow," Nova projected, referring to the scientific delegation coming to study what many now called the Helios Miracle. Successful first contact with a previously unknown sentient species. Kirax's response carried a mixture of caution and hope. The Void Shades remained wary of expanding human presence, but they had committed to the partnership. Together, they moved deeper into the cave system, toward the chamber where human and Void Shade scientists worked side by side. The buried device had been partially excavated, its alien technology slowly yielding its secrets. According to the latest models, they had 7 months before the cosmic wave reached Helios 9. It might be enough time. It might not. But facing the challenge together offered better odds than either species could have achieved alone. As they entered the chamber, humans and Void Shades acknowledged Nova with equal respect. She had become the bridge between worlds, the translator of concepts that had no direct equivalents across species. Nova sometimes thought back to that first encounter on the ridge. How close the colony had come to declaring war on the Void Shades. How one moment of curiosity instead of fear had changed the destiny of 2 species. The galaxy's apex predator had met a human girl who chose understanding over fear. And everything had changed. In the depths of space, the cosmic wave continued its approach, unaware that on a small colony world, an unlikely alliance was preparing to face it, together.